This is an update on the Ukraine-Russia war and World War III watch. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. As explained in my September 26, 2022 video titled Update on the Ukraine-Russia War and State of the World, because of Bible prophecies that indicate military defeat of the American, British, and Jewish alliance at the hands of a German led global alliance, Germany, China, and their global allies have been trying to start a war with these nations at least since 2014. In their calculations, Russia is a wild card. They are not sure that Russia would stay neutral if they started a war with the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. They want to ensure that it would not be able to wage war with them by joining the American, British, and Jewish alliance. So Germany provoked a war with Russia through Ukraine by using millions of Nazi German masqueraders living in Ukraine, President Zelensky being the chief one. The purpose is to keep Russia tied down in a protracted war of its own. Germany was preparing to install nuclear weapons in Ukraine as well as make facilities ready for manufacturing biological and chemical weapons. That would pose an existential threat to Russia. To avert that threat, Germany knew that Russia would be drawn into a war with Ukraine. Thus, Russia had no choice but to go to war with Ukraine to prevent it from developing weapons of mass destruction and committing genocide on ethnic Russians living in the Donbass region. Progress of the war in Ukraine shows that with tens of billions of dollars in American, British, German, and French weapons, Ukraine can keep the war with Russia going indefinitely to keep Russia engaged. That will neutralize the threat from Russia joining the war on the side of the United States, Britain, and Israel. The war is not going well for Russia. It has experienced serious reverses in the battlefield with reported losses of 50,000 to 70,000 according to the US Department of Defense estimates. Other estimates put the number killed at 15,000 and 45,000 wounded. Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights recorded 14,532 civilian casualties for Ukraine with 5,916 killed and 8,616 injured. Ukrainian government pushed the number of its soldiers killed at 10,000 and 30,000 wounded, 7,200 missing and 5,600 captured. Recently, Ukraine launched a counteroffensive and wrested back about 3,000 square kilometers from Russian forces, though Ukrainian President Zelensky claims that the gains are 6,000 square kilometers. And just in the last couple of days, Ukraine has captured uh, cities from Ukrainian cities back from Russia. Russia started mobilizing about 300,000 more reserves for the war effort, but the mobilizing is facing stiff resistance from the Russian people who are protesting. More than 200,000 have already left Russia and fled to neighboring countries. Those resisting are not all Russians, but German masqueraders or Nazis living in Russia for more than a century, like the masqueraders Lenin, Stalin, Alexei Navalny, and tens of millions of others. However, some genuine Russians are definitely resisting the draft, as criticism of Putin in the media seems to indicate. Meanwhile, President Putin has annexed about 15% of Ukrainian territory and made it a part of Russia, a move condemned by world leaders as a violation of the UN Charter, including by US President Biden. Ukraine has vowed to reclaim all its territory back from Russia. Western media has dubbed President Putin's statement that the war is a mission to liberate Ukraine from neo Nazi control as a lie. The truth is that the only one telling the truth about the Ukraine war is President Putin, and most of the other world leaders, including the Nazi President Zelensky of Ukraine, are lying. Since the war is not going well for Russia, it has given China and Germany some other ideas. They are hatching plans to attack Russia while Ukraine keeps Russia bogged down in the war. Their goal is to remove President Putin as its leader and take over the country annex as much of its territory with its oil, gas, and other natural resources as they want, and install puppet Russian Nazis in Russia as leaders. That is what President Putin was reacting to when he warned of nuclear retaliation if territorial integrity of Russia is threatened, and that he was not bluffing. He was warning both Germany and China with that threat. So, what is the evidence that China and Germany are planning to attack Russia? First evidence is the China lockdown of its major cities due to claimed rise in COVID cases. How come China, which was the first nation to control COVID, suddenly has COVID cases rising when the rest of the world has it mainly under control? The truth simply is that China does not have a COVID problem. Since China supplies much of the world with its manufactured goods, it is trying to disrupt supply chains so that inventories of goods in Western countries are exhausted. Therefore, when they start the war and shipment of goods from China is completely stopped, there will be much greater chaos and hardship in countries such as the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Europe. Business, commerce, healthcare, and government will be disrupted. Also, imagine the situation with shortfalls of essential goods in America and British Commonwealth nations, who are generally not used to shortages. The situation will become much worse and complicated with a full blown civil war. When a full blown civil war starts in these countries between German masqueraders, who are people of German ancestry living in these countries, and their allies against whites of non German ancestry. The second evidence is the recent social media rumor that President Xi Jinping of China was under house arrest in Beijing, and a massive movement of military vehicles in an 80-kilometer long convoy to Beijing was observed. Actually, Xi Jinping being under house arrest was a false story planted by the Chinese in some Indian news outlets through their Indian allies, knowing that the rumor would spread like wildfire. It was used as a cover to mobilize its military and move it north to the Russian-Chinese border. Thus, Chinese military has already been mobilized to attack Russia. Ukraine is already fighting from the west of Russia. Now, assessing that Russian military is weak and they can easily defeat it, Germany and China have gotten new ideas. They are planning to attack Russia directly so that Germany does not have to worry about a 200 million man army of the East headed by Russia and other kings of the East attacking and destroying them later, as prophesied in the Bible in Revelation 9, verse 16. Perhaps Germany and China have been emboldened to attack Russia because of the support pledged for Ukraine by 40 nations in a meeting in Berlin to stop Russia's aggression. Nations supporting Ukraine include all NATO nations, including the United States and Britain. Two nations exist in the United States and Britain, one headed by German masqueraders and their allies who support Germany and China, and the other by white people of non-German ancestry. The fact that the United States has supplied more than $17 billion in military aid to Ukraine shows that German masqueraders exercise substantial control over the United States government and military. However, the non-German masquerader side in the United States and British Commonwealth nations is not entirely helpless. That is why there will be a vicious civil war in these countries. Therefore, Germany and China can expect a response from the United States and British Commonwealth nations. Now, what will Russia's response be to an attack from China and through Ukraine? In all good conscience, my advice to all would be to not start a nuclear war, because the consequences will be devastating and the world most likely will not be able to put the genie of nuclear war back in the bottle once released. I have made my understanding of prophecy very clear. We've already entered the time of delay no longer and the beginning of end time events as mentioned in Revelation 10 verses 5 to 6. The angel whom I saw standing on the sea and on the land raised up his hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that are in it, the earth and the things that are in it, and the sea and the things that are in it, that there should be delay no longer. So these events can begin any time as I have stated many times. So, the first event after the world entered the time of delay no longer is mentioned in Revelation 10, verse 11. And he said to me, "You must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, languages, and kings." That prophecy has also been fulfilled by my weekly messages which I have been delivering since December 2, 2006, which every human being can hear in his own language every Saturday at 9 a.m. USA Eastern Standard Time. I read these messages in English from my computer, which are then broadcast to every human being by God's angels. You just have to tune your ear to hear them, and you will hear them. Thus, the end of the end time events pictured by the seven seals of Revelation 6 can begin at any time. And the very first event pictured by the first four seals is the Third World War, in which 1/4 of the world's population, or nearly 2 billion people, could perish, with major cities of the world as we know them today destroyed. After that, there will be further wars between major alliances in the world. That is why I cannot recommend the use of nuclear weapons. But now consider Russia's situation. If an army of 10 million Chinese attack Russia at many points, and a German and Ukrainian army attacks from Europe, and Russia having great difficulty calling reserves to fight, situation will only get desperate for President Putin and the Russians. They will perhaps be forced to exercise the nuclear option with mutually assured destruction in mind. That is how deadly the nuclear option can become. So, how will the United States and Britain respond to an attack on Russia? A civil war will immediately start, as the masquerader side will support Germany, China, India, and Ukraine alliance. The non-masquerader side cannot afford to just fight the civil war and sit idle as far as the attack on Russia is concerned. They will be forced to join the war to protect themselves, because as soon as Germany-China alliance wins the war in Russia, the United States and British Commonwealth nations and Israel will be their next immediate target without any delay. If I was advising our side, for the sake of self-preservation, we must ally ourselves with Russia in the war and consider an attack on Russia as an attack on the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel, and enter the war immediately with everything at our disposal to help Russia. The situation does not look good for status quo between world military powers. With Ukraine making gains against Russia in the west and China having already mobilized its military near the Russia-China border, the world is likely at the edge of the precipice to Third World War. As usual, I never set specific dates because nations can change their minds anytime. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos and read my articles on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels, Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, to view and get information on the latest videos. Some people do not have the time to go through the full length of videos. They find it more convenient to read the text of the video. Unfortunately, YouTube does not provide the facility to make the text of my videos available on YouTube, but fortunately Facebook does provide that facility. So I make the text of my videos available on my Facebook channel, which you can easily copy.